Hello and welcome. We are at the end of the old young ones. This is where the show itself has gotten old. We've run out of episodes. We've run out of guests. We've run out of topics. We've run out. All we have left to run is our mouths. So I am John Clarke, and this is Howie Weingarten. How are you, Howie?
I'm good, Johnny. How you doing tonight, buddy?
So we're wrapping things up.
Yeah, you can see my energy's a little bit more normal tonight. Not as
my energy is the same. It always is.
Not as it's
you don't
it's
have. You don't have a. I'll tell you why.
What?
You don't have a third. All right, if this is the way it's going to go, I'm not doing it. I'm starting over. That's not going to work. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello and welcome to the old young ones. This is the end. This is the final episode. We have run out of episodes. We have run out of guests. We have run out of topics. And the only thing left to run is our mouths. That's why I'm John Clarke, and here's Howie Weingarten. How are you, Howie?
Hey, Johnny. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Good. Yeah, we're actually taking turns talking, which is a great thing to do.
We've learned to do that after 14 episodes.
Yeah, it's been 14 episodes, and now we're like, this is kind of we're sitting on the back porch of the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's we're all wrapped up.
Yeah, it's very kind of like a melancholy kind of, not a melancholy, but it's kind of a mixed feeling kind of thing. It's just like, oh my God, we did it. You know, we said we did it.
We did the whole thing. I believe no one else has ever done this. I believe like no one else has done a full rewatch podcast of the young ones. I haven't seen one before. I haven't seen one since.
You may not see one ever again, so you never know.
That's true. Judging from some of the hit counts, people only like certain episodes. So.
And that's what's funny, because like there were some episodes I thought like, oh, we're really gonna nail this one, and there were episodes that was just kind of like, is anybody out there?
Yeah, but that's the internet.
It's fine. Whatever.
That's how the internet goes. You know, you work really hard on something, and then the hooked girl shows up. It takes all the air out of the room. And then a baby hippo.
And a baby hippo.
Yeah, but this is Howie. This is the end of your first podcast.
That's right. Series, right?
Yeah, this is how are you feeling about
it was great.
About how it went.
Yeah, I think it went great. I think we had a really was really fun people on here who are, we had people who were really diehard fans. We had people who were like, oh, I remember that show. I liked it. Yeah, let me revisit it. And then I think we did have one person who had never seen it before. We were just like, okay.
We had a couple, actually. We had a couple that I was like, well, you've seen this, right? And they were like, no, I always meant to. I know Mike Brum.
All right.
Mike Brum, who was our guest, I believe on the third episode, who works for Colbert, was like, no, I always meant to. And he had never seen it. And then Mike Drucker, who's a writer from The Tonight Show, told me, yeah, I think you forced me to watch this once.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
That's where we were.
Not exactly the reaction that we're looking for, but that's all right. Yeah.
No, but we had other guests that were like, I love this show. I've always loved this show.
Yeah.
We had one guest who was like, I haven't seen this show in so long, and I don't know why I waited so long.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's just like, when I look back at the series that we did, having people on here, they were all fantastic. They were great people. Good to meet them. But the thing is that I think especially for you and myself, we grew up on this show. Not grew up, but we were in our 20s. So the thing is that like there was a lot of this show that had a special meaning. I'm sure for you, but I can, speaking for myself, special meaning for me, because there were so many jokes that I remember and that I would quote, and I'd be like, yeah, where is that from? And it was just like, so many of them came from the young ones. And the show had a much bigger effect on, I think, not only my comedy tastes, if you will, but I think it's just something that was ingrained. I think that was, and I didn't realize exactly how much it was ingrained with this program, because there was a lot of things that I was kind of like, here's that joke that I remember that I used to love. Where the hell is that from? And like I said a few moments ago, a lot of times, young ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that feeling when it's like this weird echo, because I get that a lot. I definitely have that with this. I also get that a lot from 90s Simpsons. Like you'll see an old episode of The Simpsons and you'd be like, oh, wait, this is one of my favorite jokes that anyone's ever said coming up right now.
Right.
I just had that where, oh my God, I was just watching a 90s Simpsons and I can't remember the joke, but I like stopped everything. I was watching with my son. I was like, coming up is one of the greatest jokes I've ever heard in my entire life. And that's how good that show used to be, because I can't remember what it was. And the funny thing was, we put out an episode at random.
Yeah.
And my younger son, Sebastian, just said out of nowhere, I was like, let's watch The Simpsons. And we just grabbed one. And he went, can't stop doing the monkey. And it was that episode. And I'm like, you really know your episodes? He goes, I had no idea that was coming.
Okay.
So like these jokes just get buried down. I find that like really great jokes become like song lyrics, where you know every word. We went to see The Princess Bride over the weekend at a screening, and Terry Elways did a Q&A, and
very cool.
It reminded me of like what it must have been like to see Monty Python live in the 70s, because the crowd was like reciting lines and then cheering for the lines.
Yeah.
And it just kept happening. And it's like, yeah, and that's a movie that's like really, really ingrained deeply in people. And that's how this show was for us. Like this show came on, it came on in a whirlwind, and we just got sucked up in it. And we were like, we have to tape all these. And that was back in the 90s. I was a very big blank taper in the 90s. In fact, they were saying at The Princess Bride, they were saying how many people owned a VHS copy of this. And I was thinking, well, I have a VHS copy from HBO.
Right.
I didn't buy VHSs. They were too expensive, but I taped everything. Like I remember on Saturdays in the 90s, I would wake up early and I'd have a stack of blank VHSs ready to go, because I had to switch it out for Batman and then Spider-Man and then X-Men and then The Tick. And
that's funny.
And Young Ones was one of those. And we said many times on the show, I had Comedy Central. You didn't have cable at the time. So the only way you could watch them was to watch the tapes that I made.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, and we would watch them over and over and over again. And a lot of nights I remember you would stay over and we would stay up all night, because Beavis and Butthead would always be on. And then we'd watch Batman the Animated Series, we'd watch Blackadder, we'd watch Kids in the Hall.
Oh yeah.
And the Young Ones. Those were like, and we would just cycle those tapes until like the sun came up.
But you know what's the funny thing? The funny thing is that like with the Young Ones, is that I remember so many. Okay, I think I just realized why. I think I remember the Blackadder and the Batman and the Kids in the Hall and those other shows that you remember more than the Young Ones, because there's more of a quantity.
Yeah. I mean, there's even more Blackadder than there is the Young Ones.
Oh yeah. So because it's like there's double the episodes, really. When you think about it. More than double if you include the Christmas episode.
Right.
And the thing is that like with the Young Ones, it was just a certain finite dozen. There's a dozen episodes, but they stuck with me, and they stuck with me more than I realized. And that's why I think like watching the show, I was just, I think I was like, jubilant, if you will, just because I was just like remembering like, oh my God, there's so many jokes in this thing that I remember. I used to love. It's one joke when Mike said, I'm going to handle this problem the way I handle my mattress and sleep on it. And I was just like, that's brilliant. And just the way that Chris Ryan delivered it,
That's been part of the fun of the show is we decided to do the show because like we were watching it. Like we fell into, I happened to like watch all of them within a month of you saying, let's do this show. And then I was watching them again. And there was always that feeling of like, especially when I had a really busy day and I didn't have a lot of time. And it's like, I would have to, I would have to find a half an hour to sit down and take notes. There were so many times I'm like, well, I've seen this episode 100 times. Do I really need to sit down and take notes for it? And the answer was always yes, because I would always find things, and I would always
miss that
find
one thing
that I never noticed.
right.
It was that because I was paying that amount of granular attention, which I never did before.
Fun thing is that I still have never noticed the fifth young one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Only in stills. I'm like, but I always miss it when I watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that
I did see a lot of the frames in the second season.
Right.
You know, a lot of the subliminal images.
Yep,
we would talk about them when we caught them. We didn't catch them all. But you're right. I've never seen the fifth roommate either. I've seen videos that like pointed out here is where it is and here's the line that's being said. But in the rewatch, I still have never seen it.
You miss them.
Yeah.
You just miss them. Either your mind assumes that it's Neil, or you just miss it
because somebody would. Well, it looks like the ghost in the ring, the fourth roommate.
Oh, Samara. Yeah.
Hey, yeah.
Because
it's just the long black hair straight down,
right over the face.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that like actually, I was on X the other day checking out our site, and there are people who are Young One fans and they post, and one of them, I remember posting a gentleman who was very critical, saying this is the biggest rubbish that he'd ever seen, and he couldn't believe that they had gotten a television license and stuff like that. And it's the funniest thing because watching this series and seeing this guy's opinion, it's kind of like, it just shows you how big of a realm comedy is and how much it encompasses between what some people find to be absolutely hysterical, like we did with this show, and what other people find to be like, this is absolute nonsense. I can't even believe what, and maybe he's got a point.
They're both right. I mean,
he's got a point that there is parts of the show that's nonsense, the puppets and everything like that, and everything else that's just so non sequitur or just these hawk beer that just come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
that could be nonsense, but it's still freaking funny. It's still funny. It's still like, or maybe you just have to have that that acquired taste in comedy that you just feel like, this is what makes sense to me. This is what makes me laugh. This is what makes me feel comfortable.
Well, it's something that I feel like only comedians talk about. This is that nobody really talks about that, the fact that there are styles of comedy. And I, especially back when I was doing stand-up, there were so many comics I would talk to that would say like, and usually it was like when there was a crowd that came in that didn't like anything they saw on stage. And they were like, we heard it was comedy. This isn't funny. And I always bristle when somebody just goes, this is not funny. That always kind of ticks me off, because it's like, well, maybe it's not your style, but you can't say that it's not effective. You can't say that it's not well crafted. And I used to hear all comics say, like, you don't go to a club and they say, what's going on in here? Music. Like, you immediately go, what kind of music? And nobody ever says what kind of comedy. Correct. But there are so many styles of comedy.
Yeah. Well, Jenny and I were actually talking the other night about, because we had gone to go see Sebastian Maniscalco recently, right? And so we were watching some of his work on Netflix.
Yeah.
And the thing was that, my wife loves Sebastian, and she loves John Mulaney, and she's like, but they're so different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, they are, but they're equally as funny to me, at least. Well, I mean, you can't say. I mean,
you equate that with music. I love Metallica and I love Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
For sure. Totally equally valid.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that, when you put a value judgment on comedy, I think that's, I mean, I know it's the job of the critic per se, But the thing is that like you can't. A lot of times, it's just like you could be critical, but it doesn't mean that even if you like what you said, even if you're not into it, it doesn't mean that there isn't some sort of redeeming value to it. It doesn't mean that there's everything about it is completely, rubbish or whatever.
Well, you have to recognize the craft,
Right?
And and Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson were clearly slapstick, and which is something I don't usually go for. I was not a kid that loved the Three Stooges. I loved Abbott and Costello when I was a little kid. I did not like the Three Stooges, and
I love the Stooges. Yeah,
it was honestly. As I got older, I realized, okay, this is a style that's not what I'm drawn to, but I have to admit this is being done at the best level it can possibly be done.
For sure.
And then of course I discovered the Marx Brothers, and I was like, well, this is on another level than anything I've ever seen. Marx Brothers was like 30 Rock, and they had every style of humor because they had somebody who did that style of humor.
Right. Correct. And it's funny. No, you go first.
I used to say about 30 Rock, the characters were created each for a different style of comedy. So then in the writer's room, they just had to come up with a really funny joke, and they always had somebody to give it to that it made sense. Deliver it. Yeah, right. So it could be an absurdist joke, it could be a satirical joke, it could be physical comedy, it could be dumb guy humor. They could be crazy humor. But they always had a personality type that they could drop it in. So they never had to say, "Oh, that's not a 30 Rock joke." They never had to throw out something good because they cast this really wide net.
And it's funny because like when we first started, and I think it was like maybe it's the second or third episode, you made a reference to the Young Ones and the Muppet Show. And I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing it, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid.
Oh, no, it's the energy. It's the energy level.
But then as we went on, and I saw what you were saying, and that, yes, exactly, the energy level, then I saw more of the, and the all the energy that these guys put into the show. It was remarkable, because there's a lot of physical comedy. It's not just the jokes. There's so much physical comedy, including puppetry, which some people would consider, puppetry is an art, of course.
Well, obviously, we just mentioned the Muppet Show.
Yeah, and the thing is that like it is definitely it's part of the realm of comedy. Even for the just the ventriloquists for even. I mean, ventriloquism is not my favorite. I will admit it's not my cup of tea per se. However, I understand what it is and I respect it. So,
that means we can't do my Jeff Dunham podcast next.
Yeah, no.
Every episode is a different puppet.
We could do the what was that guy from the In-Laws?
Oh yeah, well, Senior Wenches, but that was Richard. I believe that was Richard Libatini. The In-Laws is that movie's.
I love that movie.
We have actually never talked about that because I saw that movie in the 2000s. It was one of those I saw it on Reputation, and it's like, and I'm not talking about. They did a remake with Albert Brooks and Michael Douglas, which you think, okay, Albert Brooks and Michael Douglas, that's going to be great. Nah, it wasn't great. What you need to watch is the one with Alan Arkin and Peter Falk, because
I've got flames on my car.
She cannot bite down. They both have this such specific style, and they mesh
of 1944. Like what?
Serpentine. That's all you have to say.
Serpentine
is, it's incredible. And like I said, I just watched Princess Bride, and Peter Falk's in that. My God, maybe one of his best performances.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
All right, you're very smart. Shut up.
You know, the funny thing about like, and not to go off too much on an in-laws tangent because I know we're doing still the young ones.
Yeah, please watch the in-laws. Watch it.
No, really, seriously, I remember
I might
seeing
watch
that
tonight.
movie. I remember seeing that movie in my parents took me. And that movie came out, what, 79, something like that?
Yeah,
We
it's
went to
late
the
70s.
movie theater. I had
Wow.
no idea what was going on.
I can't believe we never had this conversation. I can't believe you didn't get me to watch it.
Well, the funny thing is that like when I saw it when I was 9 years old, I thought, wow, this is kind of boring. But I guess my mom and dad wanted to see it.
Mhm.
And, fine, I sat there with a big tub of popcorn. Well, big by 1980s standards. Big was about, that big,
People were not as big by 1980 standards.
no, there was, yes, we could do a podcast on that, but sure, oh God. Anyway, the thing is that,
But the file size would be too big.
yeah, but I remember leaving that theater after seeing the in-laws when I was like 9, 10 years old. I was going, what the fuck was that? It's just like, but my parents loved it. Well, years later, it must have been on HBO or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it and I'm like, holy shit, this movie is genius.
I love that feeling too when you don't get a movie the first time. I mean,
right.
Obviously you didn't get it because you were young, but I had that experience with Army of Darkness, which is one of my favorite movies ever made. Like I have the full poster framed in my bedroom because I love that movie so much. But the first time I watched it, I was on a blind date. It wasn't going well. And I did not know that it was Evil Dead 3, and I'd never seen Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2. And I spent 90 minutes going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And who is this person that doesn't seem to be enjoying my company while watching it? And then it was 5 years later, I was watching this, watching the Sci-Fi Channel, and my roommate and I were flipping the channels, and I was like, oh my God, this is this crazy movie. And he's like, what is this? And I was like, oh, this movie's awful. It's just weird. And it's like kind of gross. And then we got sucked into it. And I was like, wait, it's actually kind of great. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I bought the DVD, and then I was watching it like every week for a year. And some things like that, like, and I'm sure the young ones like grab this right away, but I could see somebody like having to come back.
Oh yeah, for sure. What movies like that a lot? Napoleon Dynamite.
I don't like Napoleon Dynamite. There's
really,
I don't like it.
I loved it. The first time I saw it, I hated it. I didn't get it.
I only saw one, so maybe that's it.
Maybe you guys, see, that's the thing. I saw it the first time and I hated it.
I thought it was self-conscious. I thought like it was like quirky for the sake of quirky.
These people,
Wes Anderson.
I think that's part of the brilliance of it, is that it is quirky for the sake of quirky. And that the second time I watched it, I'm like, this is probably some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. It's a, you know what?
So it got you the second time.
It really, if that's ever on, unless there's something else on that's more of a priority, like a, whatever sporting event, whatever, something that you always have to watch a sporting event live. You can't watch a taped sporting event. That just, to me, that just kind of defeats the purpose of the excitement in the moment. A movie you can watch really at any point, at any time. The thing is that like, if Napoleon Dynamite's on and I see like nothing else like is grabbing my attention, it's got priority. It's got priority. I love that movie. Love Napoleon Dynamite. Even went to the 20th anniversary. My wife got up on a stage with Pedro, Napoleon Dynamite, and anyone else who was dressed like a character in the movie. And had a complete dance off. And as a prize, she got a tater tot that we still have.
Oh,
and it has not gone green yet.
That's the most surprising thing of all, unless it's like a McDonald's French fry.
Well, you wonder what the hell's in the tater tot that has preserved it from not going green. And
I always remember this joke. There was one of Conan O'Brien's writers, I think it was Kevin Rooney. He had this joke in his stand-up that the difference between me and a McDonald's French fry is if I blow against a fence by spring, I'll be gone.
Yeah.
So so I could see
that.
I could see people like just not, and we had that actually. We some of our guests. That was my favorite thing about this podcast. First of all, I was able to introduce you to people that I love, people that I think are really smart and really talented and have a great voice and a great sense of humor. And most of I think you only met one of them ever before.
Andrew.
It was great.
Yep.
Yeah. Andrew Torres, who was we were friends with over 25 years.
25.
But everybody else was like, that was part of the fun for me. I was like, oh, I want to see how Howie reacts to this guy. And like I said, a lot of them have really interesting careers, really interesting
For
jobs.
sure.
We had television writers, we had musicians, we had lawyers,
Authors.
authors, professors of television, and all of them had a different perspective on it. But all of them had like, we're committed, all of them were like, this is what's going on with this, and this is my take on it. And I thought that was the most fun part.
And you notice this is like, every take was so unique on it. The thing is that like there was, there's a very, this show is, I think, it's definitely an acquired taste. Either you get it eventually, or you get it right away, or you'll never get it. And the thing is that, I think that by and large, everyone had a take on it that I think, given the chance, if they were to watch it, if this was something that was on television right now, I think most of them, 95% of them would sit back and be like, I really love the show. I really love the show.
And I think that was our impetus for doing the show, is that we wanted other people to know about it. I think that was the thing, was you and I have never forgotten it, and we've always like gone back to it. I know, Howie, you and I have been friends for like over 35 years, but there was a period where we lost touch because life happens. And I would say I probably watched this series every year in my life. I don't think a year went by where I didn't watch it, but as you and I kept talking about it, it was so fresh and vivid in our minds that I was finding that people didn't know what I was talking about. Even people that were our age. Like I said, we've had a couple of people that they had heard of this show, but they had never seen it. And I feel like in this age where everything has been rebooted, there was a new season of Kids in the Hall 2 years ago. Like even the cult stuff like is streaming. This is a show that can never be repeated because, the main guy is gone, number one. And then it was so of its time, and they're all older. They don't have that type of energy level. You can't do the old ones, and you can't reboot it. It's so of its time. It's so early 80s Britain that like you couldn't even do it and set it in the early 80s Britain. It just doesn't make sense. I keep thinking of what Professor Wiley Podrazik talked about. He said it's not it wasn't influential, it was illustrative of the time.
Right.
And I keep going back to that. And obviously we talk about it being the world's punk sitcom. And we talked a lot about punk, about how, punk was this movement that hit hard, it hit fast, it was aggressive, and it was gone. Songs were rarely over 2 minutes, but also within 4 or 5 years, punk was over. It got, got turned into, new wave, so it got more accessible. But it also got, realizing this, it also got turned into thrash metal, because you and I been talking about this on and off. You and I went to see Metallica together. You flew in, and we saw Metallica 2 nights at Soldier Field, and which was a band we've loved since the late 80s, and we'd never seen them live, and we'd never seen them together. So after that, it was such a great experience that I've been listening to a lot of metal, and I realizing when I listened to like early Motorhead and and Metallica's Kill 'Em All, the first record, and Anthrax, I was like, well, why doesn't this sound like metal to me? Because it doesn't sound like the new wave of British heavy metal, like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. And I realized, oh, all of this sounds like punk. Like you listen to like Whiplash, Caught in a Mosh, or Motorhead.
Jump in the Fire.
Jump in the Fire. Ace of Spades. it's that speed and aggression of punk. And it's like, well, that's what punk became, because punk couldn't quite sustain itself. And even when it came back in the 90s, with Green Day really leading the charge, but there were other bands like Rancid coming out, and punk had this second life. Again,
Right.
it didn't stay. And people, and Green Day even really became a rock and roll band because their biggest hits were ballads.
Right.
And punk didn't write, the Sex Pistols didn't write a ballad.
No, of course not.
And I feel like the young ones fit that mold. It hit hard and fast, and it was gone. And then it morphed into other things. It turned into Blackadder. It turned into Filthy Rich and Cat Flap. It turned into Bottom. Later on, you couldn't sustain that. And because you couldn't sustain that, you can't recreate it.
Right. It's almost like you need that youthful exuberance that they had back in 84, 82.
Yeah.
To
That's
be able
funny.
to do that. Like what we would talk about, like, it's just like, when's the last time that you've heard your favorite metal band put out a song when they're 50 something, 60 something that rivals what they put out when they were 30 or 20?
Yeah, I have a theory that no band writes a great song after they turn 40.
Yeah.
It's like they can do some good ones. Like, I
Yeah.
liked some of the later U2 albums. I really like the last couple of Metallica records. I gave them another chance after hearing some of those songs live. But they're not going to write one again.
No.
And if they did, it would
Ride
be
the
them.
Lightning.
Yeah,
Or
I mean that's a
Black.
bad
No.
example, because Metallica did write The Unforgiven 3 different times. But it's the first one you want to listen to.
Yeah. Well, also the thing is that I think what really helped sustain this series is that there isn't an American equivalent of the show to, like, The Office, or
Yeah.
like Sanford and Son had Steptoe and Son.
Yeah.
The thing is that, like, you could say both offices, both the British and the American, both have their very strong points. They're both good shows. Sanford and Son, Steptoe and Son, both have, very good. And I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
I think they tried to come out with a show called Pigsty that was the American version of The Young Ones, and it was awful. It failed miserably. The pilot, I don't even know if the pilot ever made it to air, or if it was canceled after one episode.
Well, history is littered with failed pilots of British shows. They tried to make Faulty Towers 3 different times in America. They tried to make Absolutely Fabulous. They tried to do a version of even the IT Crowd, which is a modern show with Joe McHale, and it didn't work.
It didn't
And
work.
it's like, great shows, or there's alchemy to it. And in this age where it's like, oh, everything's IP, we're gonna do everything again. Like, we're on our 6th Batman. Like, and sometimes that works. We can just keep doing that.
Yeah, sometimes.
My theory on that is it really only works if you're adapting another medium anyway. Batman was created in print, so stick another guy in that suit. Indiana Jones was created as a movie. You can't do him again.
Yeah. And some people, I remember seeing online people suggesting that if they were to redo The Young Ones, well, why don't they get an AI version of Rick Mayall? And I'm like, no.
First of all, don't get an AI version of anything. I gave AI a chance, and I saw the results, and I'm like, ugh.
No.
And there is a fear, because when AI starts taking jobs, my job's going to be the first to go, because people aren't going to want to watch a movie written by AI, or a television show written by AI, or stand-up bit written by AI. But they'll be fine with a pharmaceutical brochure written by AI.
But the thing is that, like, we've had actors who have passed on, like Peter Cushing in Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
and then he was in Rogue One,
and didn't quite work.
Me, it looked a little creepy, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's going back now 7-8 years.
It wasn't exactly on. It looked a little creepy. And the thing is that, like, I love Rick Mayall so much. I don't want. I don't need any more. He left me with more than enough work in his career.
I haven't seen all that satisfied.
There's still some things that I've never seen Filthy Rich and Cat Flap.
I've seen the first episode. They included it on the DVD, and that's all I've seen.
Okay, I've seen probably half of Bottom, and
I've seen all the Bottom.
I liked Bottom,
Yeah.
but it's not at the Young Ones level for me. That's just a personal preference.
Well, it just isn't. And, and I've been saying it, we mentioned Bottom a lot. And obviously, if you're really into the Young Ones and you haven't watched Bottom, it's the closest you're going to get to more Young Ones. But the thing about Bottom is just Rick and Abe doing slapstick. That's the entire show, which is great. But it doesn't have the surrealism. It doesn't have Magical Planner. It doesn't have like the puppets. It doesn't have the musical guests. It doesn't have the lack of story structure.
I love Chris Ryan, so the thing is,
Chris Ryan's in Bottom. There's more Chris Ryan than there is Nigel Planner in Bottom.
You're right. He is there. But but you know what the thing is that like his mic as compared to what he did in Bottom, his mic was so good. And I know, and it's funny because like out of this series, and I know I spent a lot of time on Young One fan pages. The thing is that like Chris Ryan, Alexei Sale are two huge role players in this series, but they are so polarizing.
Yeah, we talk about that often. I mean, Alexei Sale had several shows on his own after this. And Chris Ryan, Chris Ryan just worked. Chris Ryan was a big part of Absolutely Fabulous. As I love to say, he did a Doctor Who as an alien, where he was under so much makeup that after about 20 minutes, I'm like, is that Chris Ryan? Just because of the voice.
Oh my God, that's funny.
But I famously I didn't realize Doctor Who was in Blackadder, even though it's my favorite episode.
Like what's his Tom
Baker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Captain Rum.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, it's kind of like a whatchamacallit, like a you could see like with this show, so many of these actors went on to so many different things.
Yeah. Well, the BBC is not that big a building. I feel like
I know,
a lot of them went down the hall.
Yeah. But the thing is that like, I mean, everybody comes from somewhere. And there are actors who were on the show, had their appearance and never, may never been seen of again, or went back to stage or whatever. The thing is that like with this show, you could just see exactly how many of these actors and actresses, went on to other shows that we adore, Blackadder.
Yeah, and the thing I love so much about this show is that you're right, it's all these really great people getting in a lot of ways their first shot, and trying to prove what they can do, and some of them had great careers. But what I love about the show is I always get the feeling in every episode that they're doing exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
They're not trying to like reach a mass audience or getting a lot of BBC notes or, or second guessing what would offend people.
Right.
They're just putting on a show that they want to put on. And that counts for so much. And it's so rare that you see that, even, people love to bash the MCU, and I love the MCU because I've always loved Marvel characters. And for me, it's just like, this is a golden age where it's like Ant-Man gets 3 movies, like the Vision comes back as the White Vision. It's like, I'm just so grateful for it, but those movies get rewritten and get rewritten and get rewritten to the point where like, famously Sam Raimi directed the second Doctor Strange and he didn't know what he was shooting day to day. And it's like, even stuff that's like really creative and that's obviously done with a lot of love. I feel like certainly the Kevin Feige's and a lot of these screenwriters love Marvel characters. There's still that second guessing. There's still that hemming and hawing, and there's still that we went left. Okay, circle back, go right. And I don't see any of that in the Young Ones at all.
And that's what makes it. That's what makes it brilliant. The thing is that like I can imagine just the Ben Elton, Rick Mayall, and Lise Mayer sitting around and just coming up with this show and the fun that they must have had writing this.
Well,
So
just because it's only those three people trying to make each other laugh.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
There are a lot of shows that, are nameless. A lot of shows that are forgotten, a lot of shows that were big, where it was a lot of really funny people writing stuff they didn't think was funny.
Yeah.
And you doing it for a paycheck or doing it because out of disappointment that they thought it was going to be one thing and it became something else. And,
Do I hear a little bit of Andy Kaufman as Latka in Taxi when you mention this?
Well, yeah. Well, Andy didn't. Well, that always
didn't wanna do
frustrated
it.
me because Andy didn't want to do it to begin with. He wanted off it. He tried to sabotage himself. He sent Tony Clifton in to destroy it.
Brilliant.
But you watch
Yeah, it is.
Taxi, and that always frustrated me because, like, what's one thing if he was on a bad show, but Taxi is one of the greatest sitcoms that's ever been.
It was an amazing Danny.
The writing on that show
Danny DeVito
holds up
and-
to this day. Yeah, Judd Hirsch, Mary Lou Henner, Tony Danza, like Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd.
I mean, all of these people went on to great things, and the writing staff on that went on to create Cheers and Coach and The Simpsons, and they all went on to create like all of these other great shows. And Andy Kaufman still thought it was garbage.
Who played Simca? Was that Carol Kane?
That was Carol Kane.
Love Carol Kane.
Who I just saw again in The Princess Bride. Yeah, always works. Carol Kane was for a while was like if you shot in New York, you were gonna end up with Carol Kane and Richard Kind on your show. Carol Kane was in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which was like the follow-up to 30 Rock on Netflix. And then she played Penguin's mother in Gotham. And I'm like, this is just because they shot it in New York.
That's right. That's funny. Which reminds me, I have to still see that Penguin show on HBO.
It's great. I watched the first episode. It's exactly what they promised. It's The Sopranos in Gotham City.
Okay.
That's what it is. And actually, it reminded me of Gotham. I was talking to, I was at Mr. Wayne's. I was talking to one of the guys that works at Ryan. We were talking about Penguin, and I was like, Penguin is the show Gotham told us it was.
Okay.
Because I have famously for Captain Comics watched all 100 episodes of Gotham and never liked one.
Ooh, that's bad.
I would quit, and then 6 months later, I'd be on Hulu, and I'm like, there's 7 episodes. I'll just leave it on in the background. Or I was stuck in a hotel, and it was on. But yeah, I watched that entire series.
See, the thing is that like with the Penguin series, Colin Farrell, thing is that like for the longest time, I never realized. I think it was until the movie In Bruges.
I still have to see that movie. It's not streaming.
A great movie.
I have heard that.
Brendan Gleeson, I think, in it with Colin Farrell.
And I've seen the Banshees.
And that's an amazing movie.
The Banshees and Sharon is incredible, and that reteams them and the director. And no one is streaming In Bruges. So I keep getting to the point. I'm like, should I just fucking buy it?
Maybe just buy it.
I might.
Maybe just buy it. It's an amazing movie. I haven't
had a chance to see it any other way.
And the funny thing is that with in watching, Colin Farrell, he used to make Miami Vice and stuff like that.
Well, he was the young handsome guy for a while.
He was, of course. The thing is that like when you actually see how talented he is, it's amazing. I even know the same thing with like Matthew McConaughey. I remember when I saw the Dallas Buyers Club as to compared to how to lose your lunch in 10 days or whatever. That those type of movies, The thing is that
it's like I said, a lot of people are making movies and television shows for the paycheck and for the
but there you go. And there you go. The thing is that you look at Mayall, Elton, and Mayer. The three of them were doing this just to make themselves laugh, and you knew right away from what they were producing, how immensely talented these three writers, are. And Mayall had the physical comedy to go with it. Elton went on to do Blackadder. Lisa Mayer has done many different things that she's written.
Lisa Mayer wrote Dennis Leary's one-man show that made him a star.
That was amazing.
Cure for Cancer. That was Lise Mayer.
Absolutely amazing. And it's just like you teamed up Richard Curtis and Ben Elton. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, that's where
Rowan Atkinson. Jesus Christ, there's a fucking all-star team for you.
Yeah, well, Richard Curtis has always had Rowan Atkinson as a shining star. He's written it, he wrote most of Mr. Bean with Rowan Atkinson. They did the live show together, which was fantastic.
And I still have to finish Man versus Bee.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it'll take you an hour. Show. You should watch it tonight.
If I don't watch a scary movie tonight, I'll watch that.
Well, that's a good point, because wrapping things up, I know we'll want to do something else. We're trying to figure out what that is. We talked a lot about going right into Blackadder, but there is another Blackadder podcast. So I don't know that there's room for two in the podcasting landscape.
I want to step on their toes.
Yeah, and I think we need to figure out what we'd like to talk about, because a lot of things with our friendship is I'm obsessed with superheroes. You really like superheroes. You're obsessed with horror. I really like horror.
Mm-hmm. There's some things that
we both got into.
Love Godzilla. You have no opinion on Godzilla.
Yeah, like we both.
The thing is that
we both like heavy metal, but we're old now and not as diehard. We're not screaming at Sam Goody's Clerks when they tell us the Black Album isn't good. So we'll have to figure out what's next.
We thought about a couple of different things. I mean the old Adam West Batman pops up.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot. And obviously there's a lot of Batman out there.
That's a.
I've done several Batman podcasts for other people. There's enough.
But Adam West.
There's enough Batman. You know what? I've done some. There's a podcast my friend JB Anderson runs called Bat 77. Where he mostly talks about the Bronze Age, and he talks a lot about Adam West. And yeah, we could do that. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. The only issue I have is when I rewatch Adam West, you get to season 2, and it's the same episode every single week. They just swap out the guest star, and it's like I feel like that might be hard to sustain. And then you get that third season where they got no budget and Yvonne Craig. It gets it's a little rough. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. We should do something for Halloween coming up. Horror.
I think
do something. Maybe go back to Caffeinated.
Maybe a Caffeinated comic special. I'm thinking now, and I've heard from listeners who were like, "I miss Caffeinated comics. This is okay, but I really want to hear you talk about comics." And I think we might bring that back, not as a weekly show anymore, because the whole impetus for that show. I think I've talked about this. I definitely talked about this when we transitioned to the old young ones. Was that show was to help Stephen Brown's store, and Stephen Brown is now a fireman and doesn't have a store, so we accomplished our goal. But I think there's reasons to do like specials, and I think there's reasons to do theme things when stuff comes up. There was a lot of superhero news that came out that I wanted to talk about. That because we were doing this, we never got to. I mean. X-Men 97 was the best thing Marvel's done in years. And I really just wanted to talk about that as much as possible. Sure. But the forum that we created for it wasn't up and running. So we'll figure it out. But we
will figure it out. But this
we would just want to let you know that we appreciate everybody who's listening to this.
Yeah,
I've heard so many people go, well, I don't know what show you're talking about. People have I have talked to people at work who are like, what's your podcast about? And I'm like, it's about this old 80s British show. And they're like, I don't know what that is. So, but I appreciate like some of our YouTube episodes. People have really come in and listened to it. And by the way, I think I've said this before, but every single YouTube comment we have gotten has been positive. Yeah. And I think that's incredible. The most negative thing we heard was you couldn't hear Joe Pakovitz on Flood. So we brought him back for summer holidays so you could hear him. But I just want to thank everybody who listens.
Oh, for sure. Because obviously, we appreciate, Young Ones fans because, look, we share this in common.
There's not a lot out there.
You know what? On their fan page on Facebook, they got like 100,000 people, and probably most of them are living, across the pond in England, but the thing is that like, listen, we definitely share this in common. It's it's something that is, it has withstood the test of time. This thing wasn't just something that, you watched for a while and then it just, it just fades off into the sunset. Or worse, you watch it for a while, you leave it for a while, you come back again, and it's awful. Because there's a lot of sitcoms that I remember growing up with that I thought, this is the funniest shit I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. And you're older and time has changed?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing? Yeah, there's a lot of shows.
Gilligan's Island, I loved as a kid. Loved that show.
Because it was made for kids. It's not made for adults.
But wasn't it a primetime special?
Yeah,
primetime program on ABC?
There was something about the mid-60s where everything would, when you think about it, like every show was fantasy based, because you had Gilligan's Island, you had Star Trek, you had Batman, you had I Dream of Jeannie, My Mother the
There's
Car.
some fantasies in there.
Yeah, but every show had a premise that was completely unrealistic until like Norman Lear shows up in the 70s and he's like, "This is about a poor family. I'm done." They're all a little angry,
But that's the funny thing is like All in the Family and Sanford and Son, they hold up. They hold up.
We have talked about doing a Sanford and Son, but I'm like, does the world really need two white guys talking about Sanford and Son?
Oh Lordy, we could do like an Archie Bunker All in the Family type of thing.
I never, like, Archie Bunker was one of those I appreciated, but I felt like there was so much vitriol in it. I never clicked into it the way you did.
Well, the funny thing is that like, for some reason, it's just like, it's almost like every family has its Archie Bunker.
True. Yeah, and that was the point of the show.
And you love the guy, even if you think he's a little.
See, I loved Carol O'Connor's performance. I didn't like Archie Bunker, and then as time got on, they just softened him, and you get to Archie Bunker's place.
Archie Bunker's place, yeah. No, I liked definitely Carol O'Connor's performance. I think he was amazing. The thing is that like Archie Bunker, it just reminded me of that one family member that you've got who, to whatever political majority that your family might be on, there's always that person on the other side who's a little bit off the wall kind of thing.
Old fashioned.
Where you're kind of like, oh, I can't believe that they just said that.
Yeah, what I can't believe is that it was set in my neighborhood in Astoria, but the outside of that house was shot in your neighborhood in Glendale.
Of Glendale. Yep. So amazing, right?
Well, we'll figure it out. But until then, we'll be back sooner rather than later. Yeah, we thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
This has been the old young ones, and we're gonna go now and get a little older. Because we may not be the young ones very long.